Which brings me on to the next session that we're going to run. I just want to introduce myself. Before I say that, Javier received coaching from the dancers' career development through Cedar Tell Dances, which was a choreographer development program in Bharatanatyam. So that brings me on to who am I? So I'm the director of coaching at the Dancers Career Development. My name's Isabel Mortimer. And I received money from the Dancers Career Development way back when I was ready to kind of make my transition from a dance career into something else. And they were very generous in supporting me to train as a psychological coach. So now I work with people from all over, all different walks of life to understand what motivates them, what their dreams are, how do they get out of their own way. We talked about imposter syndrome. How do you kind of get out of your own way and realize your potential? And I was doing this in the world, and then I realized actually I wanted to kind of come back to the arts. I was working a lot in the corporate world, and I applied for the Claw Leadership Program. Hindley is not here now, but and I did the Claw Fellowship. And during that process of that leadership program, I realized I wanted to really bring coaching to dance. And I approached the Dancers Career Development and said I thought it might be a really useful way of supporting dancers at any point in their career, and especially around the point where they may want to transition from being in a studio into a whole other career. And the coaching just really took off, and now it's a really vital part of the offer of the Dancers Career Development. Which brings me on to our session, which we're going to talk about how do you best manage a career break? How do you get the best out of your career break through maybe when you have an injury or caring duties, or through choice? You want to have a break, you do something else for a bit, but a time when you might feel uncertainty, identity loss, and really facing challenges that when you're not on your path, what can happen? And I have the great pleasure of introducing Professor Angela Pickard, who is the first ever Director of Education in the UK. Angela.
Just going to give my meter over here, and then I know where that is. So I think Isabel was supposed to say the first Professor of Dance Education in the UK, not first Director of Education in the UK. Because I think there's lots of us in that. So I thought I'm going to stand this side so you can see that photo for a moment. So I feel very, very honoured and privileged to be here today amongst this wonderful group who I cannot see, which is also a bit weird. No, because it's very dark in here. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, and then I'm going to talk through the slides that I've prepared for you. And I put together just a few kind of theories and ideas that have helped me during my career and my career breaks. And they may or may not be helpful for you. But I would like it to be a little bit of an interactive session, so I'm hoping that we might get maybe just a little more light in the room, so that at least I can see some faces. So, first of all, wonderful, thank you. Bye. No, I don't feel alone. So I had quite a lot of interrelated but overlapping careers during my time as a working person. And those careers started as a dancer, and I feel that I will always be a dancer, no matter what else I do, because I think it is, once you start, it becomes part of your embodied identity and it never leaves you. And I think that's really important. So although a lot of people now see me as a professor and a researcher predominantly, and that is always practice-based. It is always steeped in practice, steeped in experience of the sector and the industry. So I did have the opportunity to be an international touring dancer for some years, which I feel very proud to have been able to do. So I saw some of the world and experienced lots of different things in different countries and lived in different countries for a while. And that's really important in terms of my own embodied identity and experience. I moved into teaching because of an injury, actually. So that was one of the biggest things. There was a passion there because when I was dancing, I often had to learn the phrases of movement and so on and go into schools and community-based settings and teach those with different groups. And I loved that. I really enjoyed that, that kind of new connection that I could make with different people that was different to this kind of stage audience connection. So I knew I wanted to go into teaching, but an injury kind of led me that way more. I taught early years. I actually turned to Montessori teacher, so that's really interesting. I taught primary, I taught secondary, further education, and higher education, but later on in my career. So during the teaching, I also moved into, I was doing advisory at one point with different schools across counties, consultancy, and then started to understand that there was this whole world called research. And research meant that you could play and develop your own practice, which I loved. But it also meant that you could, read other people's ideas and connect with them, perhaps, or reject them. And that's how I kind of got started in the research side, and ended up in higher education, teaching, and also research. So now, I'm a professor of dance education. I am the only professor of dance education in the UK. There are many in Nordic countries. But I wanted to be named as a professor of dance education because I believe dance education really makes a difference to people. It could be the make or break for people to get, into dance, to understand the passion and the potential and the difference it can make to lives. So I think, teaching and teachers and all of what that encompasses, which can be in school-based, community-based, or with choreographers and in companies. So education in the broadest term. That was really important to me. So I do that as my sort of title. But I also run a research centre for arts and health. And mostly all of the dance programmes within that. So working with babies and mums, as I heard someone in the break talk about babies and mums, with pregnant dancers postpartum, with early years young children, with adolescent young people, with older people, and with professional dancers as well. So I span lots of different projects, thinking about health and well-being, longevity in the profession, those sorts of things. But today, we're going to work together to see if we can think about some breaks that we might have in our careers that might be deemed sort of interruptions, but also opportunities. So sometimes an interruption, whether that is injury or illness or a caring responsibility, maybe that's for a baby, a young person, perhaps it's adopted, perhaps it's your birth, or perhaps it's an older person that's in your family or a relative of some sort. Along our lives, as we all know, there is never a linear progression. And there is never I will start with this career and probably end it in that same career. Life is not like that now. And it was really wonderful to hear that this morning with the panel, that we're all navigating all of the time, and mediating all of the time, negotiating all of the time. And as dancers, we have those skills to do it. I really believe that, and I'm full of a group of experts in the room who can share experiences today. So, this was the title that we started thinking about. So, how do dancers sustain and develop their skill set and career whilst not dancing? So, perhaps taking a break due to injury, caring, or being unemployed, or perhaps long-term illness, or whatever it is. So, together, we may or may not get through this, and we may or may not stay with the slide deck. We will see how that will go. But, the first is sort of raising awareness of the challenges and opportunities of career interruptions. So sometimes in a career, there are precarities, there are uncertainties, and sometimes we feel that vulnerability and that worry around that. But we know that we can flip that mindset, and as dancers, we do that really well. And we see interruptions or challenges as opportunities. I think it's important, I always think it's important for us just to remember why we might be, how we are, and that's in a really positive way, but actually there are also vulnerabilities that we have as dancers maybe, and doubts that we have as dancers, that may be because of our own becoming a dancer and embodied identity. Examines the social cultural power structures of dance culture, again, just so we understand kind of what we're navigating more and more. Discuss some knowledge, skills and opportunities during dance career interruptions, and share some examples of opportunities and transitions. So hopefully we can get a little bit of time to talk with each other as well. So this might be useful for us, if I become that way because it's something easier to see. So around 90,000 people in the UK take some kind of career break every year, whether to raise a family, travel the world, or look after an ageing relative. So that's a lot of people. 1 in 8 adults in the UK have caring responsibilities. There are estimated to be approximately 8,100 dancers and choreographers working in the United Kingdom as of the second quarter of 2024, compared with 9,000 in the previous quarter. However, that's people who identify as a dancer or choreographer. We know our careers out of a portfolio with a whole number of things. So those statistics are quite challenging. We know we've got over 50,000 artists, people that don't term themselves as artists, and that could be dance artists too. And the instant range of musculoskeletal injuries observed in professional dancers, so this is particularly ballet and contemporary, so it is quite a narrow view, is around 5 injuries per 1,000 hours, which is quite high. And that's just with what we understand in terms of reporting and your ballet and contemporary. So we know that, a lot of dancers will have an injury at some point, and they may have an interruption or career break. And as I say, that's only ballet and contemporary. We've got all of our other genres that we haven't even started to report. 84% to 95% of dancers are affected by an injury across their career. So at some point, people will have some kind of, short-term or long-term issue. And dancers can experience an identity crisis due to pregnancy, postpartum, care responsibilities, or injury. So Anna and I have done some research together from the Harris and Harris and Performing Arts around this, which I'll show you about, and I continue to work in this area too. So this is quite interesting. So I think we're basically saying that at some point, we're probably going to have a disruption to our norm or an interruption. Probably not a surprise. There's something really special about embodied identity, though, and that all of these kind of interruptions and disruptions and mediations and so on in our lives mean that we're building our embodied identity. And somebody earlier talked about a toolkit in the rucksack, and I think it was our keynote speaker. I always talk about how we walk around with a rucksack of experience, and we add to that rucksack of experience every time we navigate a new experience. So even today, there'll be new things going into that rucksack just from this couple of hours that we've had together. And that rucksack of experience becomes our embodied identity. So it is body and mind, it's holistic, and all of what happens to us in life, inside and outside the dance studio, goes into that rucksack. So there'll be lots of things you're probably assuming about me as I'm talking, and lots of things you won't know about me as I'm talking, that are all in my rucksack that I bring out and I navigate the world with those experiences. So in terms of embodied identity, we all have knowledge, skills and understanding of dance that we can bring to all aspects of our lives. Now, one of the most important principles that underpin everything I do is relationships and empathy, and it's something that's really, really important to me. It's my, one of my most important principles, because I don't think I would be able to do what I do or have done what I've done without being able to connect with people, whoever they are, wherever they are, and so all of my work is down to other people, actually. And I'm just, supported and challenged and facilitated, and people have taught me heaps. So I think in terms of my embodied identity, there's lots of mentorship, and there's lots of counsellors, and there's lots of knowledge of other people in my rucksack. I'm also a trained counsellor and mentor, so all of that is because I've connected with other people in that way. So when we think about dance, we can't ignore our social cultural environment. So dance is around what Bourdieu says. So Bourdieu is a philosopher, and I really like the ideas of Bourdieu, and I just wanted to share a little bit about him to you and with you, because I just found him really helpful to kind of understand how power works and how the rules of the game in society work. So Pierre Bourdieu is a French philosopher. He's died now. But he talked about a conceptual framework, which was field, capital and habitus equals practice. So it's called a logical practice model. So what he talks about here is that we are navigating fields in everything we do. The fields can be contexts and institutions, organisations. The field for us is dance, we could say. But within dance, we've got lots of sub-fields. So we could talk about the field of ballet, for example. Now, in order to understand the field of ballet and navigate the field of ballet, you need to know some rules of the game. So you need to know, for example, a codified set of movements, that 300 codified set of movements in ballet. And as you build up your understanding of that knowledge, that world, you gain capital, and your capital can be physical, it can be expressive, it can be economic if you start earning money from it, potentially. But you can also bring social capital, which is power. So all of these capitals become power. Now, when we talk about the rules of the game, what Pierre Bourdieu talks about is habitus. So it becomes habits that we understand. Another example which many people use is wine tasting. I know nothing about wine, so I cannot enter that world. I have no capital in that world. I don't have the habitus to navigate that world. But if I wanted to, I could begin learning about it and build my habitus or build my habits, my understandings, and when I pick up a wine, I immediately know what it is. In dance, we're all familiar, and we all have a habitus in dance because we have that knowledge, that skill, that understanding, or set of skills, that understanding. So we have a habitus in dance, we have power in dance because we have capital. And we practice. So when you understand the power, the rules of the game, you can then practice. And as you build your power, you navigate that world and gain more slices of that power, if you like. And so that I found quite interesting when I was thinking about how we are included or excluded in the worlds that we navigate, and how we can build that capital power, and how we can start building that capital power with very young people. So I've just found that really interesting. So what I wanted to do now is just take a moment just for you to share with people next to you, what capital power do you have as dancers that you can bring to any interruption, any career, do you think? So just something that you think you have as a knowledge, skill or understanding that you've got from dance, but actually you can apply elsewhere. And still be within the dance world, but maybe not as a dancer, maybe as a different type of career, still within dance, but maybe outside of dance. So just tell people near you, just a moment, one knowledge, skill or understanding you think you have.
This is
Okay, everyone, I'm sorry to cut you short. Do come back together again, please. Amazing, thank you so much. Would you mind just shouting out some of those, please?
Openness to learning.
Pardon?
Openness to learning.
Openness to learning. Amazing. Okay, another?
Problem solving.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. We use that a lot. Yeah. Perseverance with that, yeah? Flexibility in body and mind. What were you saying? Any others? Yes. Mediating, yeah, absolutely. Some more, yeah?
Joy and togetherness.
Joy and togetherness, love that. Wonderful, yes. And we need to keep that joy, don't we? That should be at the heart of what we do, actually. Yep. Did you have one? I thought I allowed up this.
The way we can split our brain into different sections, so we're often hit by something, and our brain goes, bit.
Yeah. I'm never sure if that's neurodiversity in my heart, on my part, or whether that is actually how dancers think. Because when I've met people and I talk about, I say I can think holistically and then I can categorise and sort things really quickly. Is that dance? I don't know. I think it is. But then people say, oh no, that's just the way you are. So that's a really lovely one. I love that. Anything else? Yeah.
But interpretation, you really like it, yeah?
Yeah, that's really nice, actually. Yeah, interpretation. Okay. Yep. Teamwork. Teamwork. Yes.
Embodied knowledge.
Yeah.
Formed by lived experience.
Exactly right. Absolutely. Yes. Amazing. Yeah. Quite right. Yes. How about music? Yes. Yeah. Yeah. You're right. You're right. Because actually, again, we take for granted the fact we're immersed in music all of the time. Sound, music. I think somebody, again, was talking in the break. I was overhearing, but I couldn't connect with you because I was thinking. But I think you were talking about possibly doing a PhD in sound. So, yes, there is something very special about the sound we have, is there? One more, then we must be on. Sorry.
Love.
Yes.
Working with anything or anyone you'll get.
That's amazing. Absolutely. You're right. I really believe that, that's what we do. We love art, don't we? We share the luck in the room. But absolutely. So, I think, whenever we have precarity, or we experience a lot of precarity in dance, and at this time the landscape is precarious, but the landscape, in my optimistic way, has been precarious for several years, and yet we're still here, doing amazing things and making a difference to the lives of people and ourselves. So I think that's really important to remember, that we have been in uncertainty, we continue to be in uncertainty, and we will always be in uncertainty, and yet we manage, we find a way. And I loved this morning where somebody said, because we connect with each other, we must do that. We are not lone wolves, we have to connect with each other. So these are some of the things I just started listing. You've added to those, and we should collect those too. But it's just a really nice activity to do with people. And I do this with young children as well, and adolescents, to say, what does dance bring you? Why is dance so special? Because we do need to get better, I think, as a sector, to say what is special about dance. I'm just going to do a little plug now. You know that our school curriculum is under review in primary and secondary school. There is a consultation, there's opportunities to feed in. We want dance for dance's sake, because it's really important. It does bring us all of these things, but it does it in a very special way, and that's what we need to get really clever and articulating. We don't want it just to be extracurricular, we don't want it just to be for something else, because it brings all of these things holistically, which is really, really important to us. So that was just a moment of aside. Okay, so as I mentioned, we know that the majority of us are self-employed when we work in dance. The majority of freelance, we have a dance career. It can feel highly competitive because, we're going for different jobs that other people are going for, so it can feel like it's quite a highly competitive environment. And this word competitive is an interesting one, because you are competing often with your friend, aren't you, in these things? And yet, we also work really well together, so there's something really special about that, I think. It can be precarious because it's self-employed freelance, often short-term projects and contracts. We have a lot of artistic, physical, technical, and psychological demands, so we manage to connect all of those things together holistically. We learn to manage pain, discomfort, fatigue, and injury from an early age. Now, this is interesting, isn't it? The reason why this is particularly interesting is this links to our embodied identity. So this is where, I think again, somebody's already mentioned well-being. This is where we often forget ourselves, and as we're navigating the world of dance, we often forget that actually we come with this. We're learning to, and we ignore pain and discomfort and fatigue and injury from an early age, that we tend to kind of continue to do that. And that is something for us all to just kind of hold it to and remember that we are that, and that isn't actually what other people do. I mean, some athletes do. But I think it's quite important for us, again, when we come across an uncertainty and an opportunity, how we mediate and navigate that. Because sometimes we're quite hard on ourselves because of this, because of the way that quite often, and unfortunately still, in some cases, training environments develop us. That, it's all about pushing against the signals in the body and the noticing in the body. Sometimes it's about pushing through pain, discomfort, fatigue, and sometimes it's pushing the boundaries of the body as well. So it's worth us remembering that. But we know that our livelihoods actually can depend on our physicality and taken for granted abilities of the body, that they can be mined out of body. So again, it's just us worth thinking about that. There's a lot about physicality, but all dance careers, they're not all physicality. So there's many other things that we can do when we might have to pause our physicality if we're injured, for example. So this is from a recent Arts Council strategy, which just raises some issues around freelancers. You might know this. It's recently out. It's the Cultural Freelancer Strategy from Arts Council England. I don't know if anyone's here today from there. So freelancers reported a wide range of challenges with impact on their mental health, including a lack of work-life balance, fatigue, anxiety, despondency. These are directly related to the insecurity and unpredictability of work in the sector, and the tendency for freelancers to have to overcommit or overwork. A number of freelancers with serious mental health conditions explained how the stresses associated with precarity and challenges of freelance work frequently exacerbate their condition. So again, it's just a flag to remind us that, we are navigating quite challenging worlds, and it can impact on us, physically, mentally, holistically. And so it's about connecting together when we're thinking about these pause moments, these moments where we're feeling stress. How are we navigating that? How are we managing that? How are we working with each other to support each other through some of these challenges? So, recently did a project with Anna in Parents of Carers in Performing Arts when we were looking at pregnancy and postpartum. And we started with 40 dancers, which we interviewed for a pilot study. And then I've continued with this work with 103 dancers now, and looking at all sorts of different strands. So we can start by just thinking about pregnancy and postpartum. But actually, there's lots of connections here about what happens when we might have an injury, or when we might have long-term illness, or when we might have other caring responsibilities. So in pregnancy, we found that the dancers have often an identity crisis, because although you might want to have a baby, and you might feel bland to have a baby, there is something around the changes in the body and the norms and expectations that you have become used to changing. And for our dancers in our study, that caused what we're calling an identity crisis. Because there's a moment, and again, I'm sure many of you experienced this in injury, where you're just thinking, I'm not me anymore. And something has changed. So we found in this study that there were psychological and social vulnerabilities of being a dancer mother. And our dancers became highly aware of taken for granted size, shape, and ability of the body. I'm a mother as well, so I can relate to this too. There were psychological impacts as dancers struggled to accept and adapt to bodily changes, increased vulnerability to disordered eating behaviours. So we know we've got a lot of research around how, partly because, again, that earlier slide of pushing through pain and discomfort and vulnerabilities and fatigue, that we do still have a sector which has, increased vulnerability to disordered eating behaviours, many of which people don't even know they have. So I think that's a really interesting other study, which we can talk about another time. There's a social loss of a close-knit community. So often in dance, we connect with people in dance. Our social lives around dance, as well as our work life has been in dance. So when we have a time out, an interruption, whether that's through pregnancy or injury or long-term illness, we're losing that social community. And initially, particularly when having a baby, people are very excited in those first months, maybe 6 weeks, first month, 6 weeks. They're very, very excited. And all of the social network are very excited for them, and you get lots of visits and lots of support and lots of help. And then after that, there's this moment of, and this is where the dance community and your social loss really takes hold. Now, you can, of course, build new social communities. But again, there's something special about dances that means that can be quite challenging too. So what we found in this study, there were some similarities to psychological impacts of long-term illness or injury or aging or retirement, similar to some of the other people that have researched these areas. So I'm just sort of throwing this in because I just think they're things for us to think about. So in terms of identities, the dancer mothers face unique and complex challenges. There was the changing relationship with the body during pregnancy and postpartum, and there were these tensions. And again, we've had this when we've talked to people with injury too, a tension between what I expect my body to be able to do and how my body looks and feels, and the fact it's let me down in some way because it's not snapping back after pregnancy, or I'm not healing as quickly as I could after an injury, I thought. I thought I would heal quickly, and I haven't. All sorts of things have been coming through from these studies. So this tension relating to conflicting priorities and identities as a dancer and a parent. So these dancers, they loved being parents, but they also love being dancers, and again, it's now mediating that. And the loss of known community, as I mentioned, and the sense of loss, loneliness, isolation, uncertainty that can be brought from that. So what I'm trying to do today is recognise that we are very strong in many ways at navigating lots of situations. We must also acknowledge there are impacts. And those impacts, when we have these interruptions, are felt and real and become part of the embodied identity. But there are ways that we can navigate them. So, career interruptions then, they can be planned, they can be a gain, they can recharge us, they can reconnect, and they can help us diversify our portfolio. People tend to focus more on the negative, I find. That, people talk about the unplanned, the loss, the purpose, lack of purpose, lack of identity, lack of community social networks, and precarity, fear of the unknown. So how do we respond to these challenges? And how do we reframe, and how do we build more resilience? We have resilience, we always have resilience, but there's different ways that we can work through our resilience. So I wonder if you might turn to someone near you now and just share, you don't have to share all the detail, but just share what you might have done to navigate a challenging situation. So just turn to someone near you. What did you do? Did you think about it as a reframing from a negative to a positive? Just take a moment to share with someone near you.
Really? Please.
shout-outs. So would anybody like to shout something out so maybe they did as a strategy to reframe or move through an interruption in their career? Yes.
And well, I've been to dance at all because of the psych degree, and prior to my dance education, I was saying that I'm both very lucky in their path. And I did for the education people around me. And I didn't let that kind of get to a bullet point. I did not rep that. But things like this, why let my education, institution, it was kind of like, oh, she's so straight, geek straight. And it was quite a free form for a family. But instead of thinking of it as, oh, I kind of failed, just see it this thing that we want me to do, and thought of it as I'm now liberated because I had it beat and took away all the expectations of the boundaries and empty. Again, I don't recommend pointing over, but because I have a one stretch out, I can quite knew what I want to do. Because, yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you. We have time just for one small. Yes.
I'm from the US. I had a career in Hollywood. I did So You Think You Can Dance and Dance for Artists. And then found myself in India doing Bollywood films, so wholly different. And then I found my fiance here, and I'm like, okay, I know what it takes to start over. And I'm currently in the spot of the fear and the unknown of what's next, who's my community. And I always end up finding myself in a room like this. So I'm excited to be here.
Wonderful. So you've offered magnetism to a new community, so thank you for sharing. Okay, we are short on time. I have one more slide. So, ways that we can really help ourselves when we're in an interruption or navigating something new is that we can draw on social support. So we've talked about this already today. So it could be that we're looking to find someone for direction. It could be DCD. Now, this can be, parent, teacher to child, but it can be looking for a mentor, looking for someone as a sounding board. I couldn't be where I am if I didn't talk to people about stuff all of the time. My team who I work with, they know that I have to talk everything through to find different ways of doing things. And I really enjoy people coming back with different ideas too. And people who disrupt my own thinking, because I like to be more creative, and if there's other ways of doing things, that's really exciting. And when you get into a room with someone who you can build trust with, who you feel, you have an ally, who can be supportive but also challenging, that can be really helpful for you to find a direction. It won't necessarily be immediate. They may just be someone, it's a bit like a sort of coach or a counsellor, they might just offer some prompts for you, but that can be really helpful. And I know DCD will be ready to do that. It could be, you just need someone at your disposition, you just want someone to be available, it could just be someone for a chat. And within that chat, you then start talking about, okay, I'm at this crossroads, what can I do? Or I didn't get this funding, or I didn't get, what I thought I was going to be doing. I didn't get that job, wherever it is. Someone just is available to you. Again, just to be a sounding board to talk things through. You might be developing a network. It could be your family, it could be other kind of teachers or peers that you're working with, or again, other dancers, other artists that you're working with. So that network. There are many networks now that we can tap into all of the time online, and we can engage in lots of courses and so on to help ourselves. It could be that you want some kind of context, so again, it could be you're searching in that way for different courses and so on that are free, or it could be that you want to just have someone to kind of evaluate the situation with you and start describing what's actually going on. So the social support is really, really important. So we've had time, we have to stop there. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. There's so much more we could discuss. We are running around trying to keep to time, so I'm really sorry to move you on so swiftly. We are now going to watch a film by John Beney. So just take your time and absorb this next film.
What's the point of coming home every night, moaning about what you've been doing? I want to come home every night and go, yeah, well, that was amazing, I've had a great day, do you know what I mean? Why am I a dancer? I suppose as a kid I grew up watching Michael Jackson and breakdancing, and we'd go on holiday quite a bit to Spain. So I would dance in the clubs as a kid and win drinks from my mum and dad, and that, I suppose that's where it started. But then in terms of dance as a career, I never really thought about it. And it was just little events in my life that kind of carved that pathway. I lost my left eye when I was 5, so I've never known really having vision out of 2 eyes. And when I tell people that, they always kind of go, well, how did you manage such a successful rugby career? A couple of lads asked me to go training when I was about 12. I went down, I got addicted to it, training-wise. I loved the physicality of it. I liked the challenge. And each year I got better and better, and that led me to play for Great Britain under 18s. Toured France, come off that tour, and I got British Player of the Year. Was having a whale of a time, went down to play for Kingston Rovers, and then got kneed in the side of the head. Had a seizure and stopped breathing. Died for just a short period of time. And they brought me back round. No, I had to choose, really. It has informed everything I've done since that period. I need to be happy about what I'm doing. And that's what I try and pass on to other people. You could be gone like that. In people's mind, dance is so far away from rugby. In my mind, so closely linked. I just realised that actually dance is pushing my body in the same way that rugby pushes my body. It was just a natural route for me. It made perfect sense. Dancing just makes me feel different every time I do it. Sometimes it can make me feel sad, because I know it's going to come to an end. But seeing other people listen to what you've got to pass on is what makes me really happy. When you hear a bee, kids either bounce their feet or clap their out. We all have this innate thing to move. It's the word dance that's a problem. I work with the word more. Yeah, I genuinely believe everybody can love.
Thank you for your film, John. Now I'm going to introduce you to the stage. And Avatâra. There you are, Ayuso. Avatâra is a director, choreographer and dancer. John is a choreographer, dancer and movement director. I would invite you, because of time, what I want to do is invite you to share from your vast experience How did you navigate a really big change to you? How did you do it? What did you use? What was important about it? And I'm going to start with John. Do I use?
Hello? Yeah, John. Hi everyone. Nice to meet you. Thank you to everybody so far. Thank you to DCD for having me involved. It truly is inspirational listening to everybody else. And thank you for showing that film. It's the first time I've seen that film with an audience, actually, so it's quite nice. Yeah, I suppose the slideshow that we just watched really triggered a lot for me as well, because that I would see that as my first career break, really, and because I always had my heart set on being a professional rugby league player. That was it. I used to sit at school drawing, stadiums and imagine scoring a try at Wembley and all of that. And then I got injured and I had that horrific, injury that's put an end to that career. So, but I didn't see it as a loss. I saw it as a gain, and I didn't focus on the negative. But I didn't have time to, because I had that injury when I was 18, and my then partner, was pregnant with my first child. So I was 19 when I had my first child. He's now 24. I've got a 19-year-old daughter, and I've just started again. I've got a 2-year-old girl in it. Which I'm really struggling with, but yeah, so I can relate to all of those things that have just been said, and seeing my partners and my wife go through pregnancy. My wife's a dancer. She's really struggling with identity, and I'm really trying to take a lot of childcare so she can go back and do projects, and we're sharing that. So I'm here working on a project, then she'll have a 5-week project, and I'll have a little line, and so on. So trying to find that balance of supporting each other when and where you can, I think, is vital. So yeah, I think just navigating anything that throws up a challenge like that is the way forward. And I think that I could do that because of everything that I learned from sport, first and foremost. I carried that into dance. And then I learned it all again and more through dance, through training in dance. And now I'm trying to convince the dance sector to do more from sport, learn a lot more from sport as well, because we could do, as an art form, we could learn how we structure companies, we could have reserve companies, like teams have reserve teams, and anyway, it's a long story. But yeah, so, that's how I kind of navigated all of that, just with a positive attitude and approach. In 2008, I was diagnosed with epilepsy. I was working for Protein Dance, and I just collapsed. So then I had another career break in my dance career. So it was like, right, how do I deal with that? Because that is going to end again. I'm not going to be able to dance again. So one of the words on the list was refocus. I just took time to refocus. I took a breath. I took some time out, and I thought, no, I'm not going to let this be the end of my dance career. So I navigated that. That's controlled by medication. When I'm teaching, when I'm working with companies, I explain that. I have my band on and things like that, So I navigate all of these different areas, and I've gotten that through dance. And I've gotten that through working with people, meeting people like yourselves that are in this room, and taking inspiration from as many people as possible. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much, George. Just something about the reserves, because that's really important. I was with New Adventures, Matthew Ball's New Adventures, and when we first did Swan Lake, which is 30 years ago on Saturday, and we didn't have a reserve team. So when we first did it, we had to cut dancers because we'd never done 8 shows a week. So it's a really important thing in talking about the reserve, how do you manage it, but also the override. I call it the override. You know what I mean? We override how we're feeling, what we're doing. We just keep pushing through. There's good stuff in that, but there's also stuff that's not so good.
Yeah. Sorry, just to add, that pushing through is some of that is the real problem in our industry. And sport doesn't, when you get to a certain level in sport, it doesn't allow that. Sport allows you to recover. It gives you the time to look after yourself. And yeah, we know that the money's different, obviously. The money in sport is different. But the mindset should be different in our industry. We should be looking after our dancers like we look after them as athletes, because we're athletes.
Avatâra, have you got an example that you can share where you've navigated a change in your career?
Yeah, I was thinking that there has been 3 moments in my life where I had a crisis, let's say. The first one was an injury. I have had many injuries in my career. I started when I was 7 years old, but at 18, I was pushing too much and my body developed a tumor. So at that time, I was doing only classical ballet, and we didn't have J2 or anything like that. So in my world, there was nothing else, flamenco, and I was not good at that. That was not an option for me. Very good at that now. So basically, that meant that I had a total identity crisis. It's like, this is me. I don't know how else to be. So my strategy at that time was to develop anger to a point that moved me. It's like, it didn't paralyze me. It was like, it's like 2 weeks after the surgery, I was doing my ballet bar on the floor, and I was saying, if I can't do ballet anymore, that's not an option for me. What else is there? So then I started with Argentinian tango until 2 a.m, quite often, and then contemporary dance. So I opened myself to possibilities that I didn't think that they existed for me, because that's what they told me I had to do, being a ballet dancer or just a ballet teacher. So that was kind of the first identity crisis that I had. And then kind of many years later, of course I went through many years, but then I had a creative crisis, and that happened just before the pandemic. I did a solo called Angel, which it's a 50-minute solo. I was on the stage and I found that performing it in a traditional black box was not enough. I was too far. I couldn't communicate with them, the audience, or create the empathy that I wanted. So I had a moment of like, how can I communicate what I want to in another setting? So it took me a year and a half to realize that virtual reality had to be the place, but I didn't know anything about virtual reality. So this is when Dancers Community Development came into place. I said, I have an idea, I don't know what to do. I know there are some trainings, can they support me? And they did support me with that. And then I had another crisis that was a social crisis. So I'm privileged to have, my work is actually made outside the UK, so I get to collaborate with a lot of organizations around the world. And I was fascinated by the talented women, especially that I met, the lack of opportunities they had. So that was building inside me, that social issue on, lack of equality and equity. So then I went back to DCD and I said, I have an idea. I want to found a charity. And then they told me, okay, go and do some leadership training. And that's when I did the CLOR, Open University. With the CLOR, I had a mentor, and then was a mentor, and other people around me that supported me in that journey of, I don't know what to do, but I know there is an infrastructure. And I have to say that we are incredibly privileged to have DCD. I just flew Italy this morning. I landed from Santiago de Chile after a 15-hour flight. And one of the issues that the Latin American companies are having, ballet companies, which is different to the context, it's like the dancers there, both I've been in Uruguay, in Santiago, in Argentina, they're telling me they're freaking out because they don't know what to do after, they are keeping them until they're 60, 65, because they don't have a transitional program to help them. And all of them are in fear. Already by the time they're 30, 35, it's like, I cannot retire because I have nothing else to do with my life. So thank you, DCD, for all the work you do for us, because we are very, very privileged.
Thank you.
Amazing. Just share one more story quickly. That in 2013, we got to host the Rugby League World Cup. I got to work on that with the amazing Jen Ayuso, who's in the room, and that she'd speak to her. She's brilliant. And as part of the team that was working on the opening ceremony, putting the community dance peaks together. So 500 non-dancers, different ages, abilities. We put the show together. At the opening ceremony, there was a professional show choreographed by James Wilton. That show was ended by Gareth Thomas scoring a try. The music went out, Gareth Thomas scored a try, the crowd went wild. England played New Zealand at Wembley, as part of that World Cup. Because I was part of the team, I had a pass that got me to every game. So obviously I went to every game. And then they brought that show back. They asked me to put on an England strip and score a try at Wembley to finish that show. So as a dancer, I got to fulfill a childhood dream of scoring a try at Wembley. So it just kind of went full circle. So being an inspirational event, I just wanted to share that.
Just before we finish, because we're going to finish at 1:05, if that's okay with everybody, I just wanted you three to think about one top tip that you would give to dance artists when they're thinking of making a career change or having a career break or can sustain them. But before we do that, I just wanted to see if anyone had any burning questions or thoughts that they wanted to share quickly. Yes.
With regards to the question about sport and dance and the transfer, I 100% agree. Basketball is my background. It has transferred. What would you say for the dance community has been key skills that have crossed over for you?
So shape your legs and...
I think it's really sick that the key things that you learn from sport are to be a team player. You need that in dance when you're on tour in small-scale companies, when you're helping learn dance floors and stuff like that. You don't want to be that person that's, like, not involved in any of that, So being a team player, simple things like turning up on time, being the first one at training, being the last one out of training. They're all things that we share in dance. And I just took that into my dance training, and it wasn't a shock to me. I'd come off tour with Great Britain. I auditioned for Northern. I was 15 and a half stone. They said, maybe come back next year. So I just did my training, I re-auditioned, and I got a place. But it's that mental fortitude, that resilience that sport gives you that I think is the key thing that can take you on to dance. And then when you realise that actually you've got all of them skills, then they can help you in your career in dance. And then it's just endless, But I think our sector really needs to learn a lot more from sport and how it structures organisations and how it looks after their athletes, really do.
That's great, thank you. So, Angela, I'm going to invite you back up, and I'd like you to share your one top tip that can sustain dancers, all three of you. So I'm going to start with you, Avatâra.
Yeah, I would say communicate your needs, your passions, your desires, because out there is someone that can help you. Maybe put you in touch with someone. It might be that they have the resources, the financial resources, the logistical resources. So just communicate your fears, your passions, your aspirations. Don't keep it for yourself.
So mine would be probably reach out to people and listen, but also take care of yourself.
I would say remember why you did it in the first place. And for me, it's always because I loved it. I loved rugby, so I wanted a career, like the film said, in something that I loved doing. I'm a twin, got a twin brother. He's a builder. My dad's a builder. I just didn't want to be a builder. Simple as that. So, remember why you got into it in the first place, and don't try not to let people be that out here, or the situation that you might find yourself get you down to the point where you pitch up.
Thank you. Those are really important points, because there's something about when you talk something out, it becomes much more real in the world. And when you talk it out to somebody else is a witness to you saying it. I think one of the things that's really important that you touched on is that typically in a dance training, you're working with the body, you're not working with the mouth. And actually, as we're saying, dancers has so much to give to the world, incredibly important. We have so much that we could share and offer the corporate world, the world in general, but we kind of sit back on it because we don't necessarily know how to articulate it or talk about it or share it.
But even within dance, that's my maximum stretch. I cannot sit in second, and I do this as a teacher, I do this all the time, guys. Look, I've taught the world as a dancer, and they can't understand how come you can't get your leg up here. There's companies that aren't looking for that. There's people that don't want that. There's people that want something else. And I use that all the time when I'm teaching. Dance is not the stereotype that everyone thinks it is.
Lovely. On that note, Avatâra is an amazing Argentinian tango dance artist as well.